Hello, everybody. Welcome to our professional interpreter panel. Thank you, registrants. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, anybody else who might be lurking and doesn't want us to know who you are. We know who you are. We have the list. SCRID is very happy to host our wonderful panelists to talk to you about their work, their life journeys, their aspirations, their failures, anything that comes to mind this evening. But first off, we certainly would like to get the panelists to answer some basic questions. So panelists, if you wouldn't mind, we'll kind of go round robin and just introduce yourself briefly and tell us this information that I just put in the chat. What's your name? What's your certification or evaluation, if you have any? How long have you been interpreting? And do you have a favorite or preferred setting you would like to interpret in? Who would like to start first? Go, Yesenia. She beat you, Dana. You're second.
Yay. So my name's Yesenia Ramirez, and let's see, I'm NAD, NIC certified. I'm also a SOTA. That even makes sense. And hopefully soon I'll be done with my doctorate. I'm just ABD at this point. Years of experience, right? Years of experience since, let's see, I've been signing since I was 4. My sister's deaf, my nephew's deaf, so there's something going on there. Let's see, I've been working as an interpreter since right out of high school. And I started out of high school, then I went to community college, and then I went to university, and then I got stuck there. And it was a good stuck. But I've been certified since 2000 and working as an interpreter for 28 plus years. So, but I don't consider from 4 to 18. This is my practice years because I did a lot of work without getting paid. And then my preferred setting, for the most part, I like higher ed. It just keeps my mind fresh and you learn, and it's just great. I love medical. I've done a lot of medical interpreting just personally with family and stuff, but I like being out in the field, just doing everything. I just haven't been doing that because I've been in school and I've been in education for a long time. So who's next?
Dana.
Guess it's my turn. My name's Dana Arazi. I currently teach at Rio Hondo College full-time there, both ASL and interpreting. I used to have my CI/CT and my NIC master from RID, but I got into a disagreement and sent them a lovely letter and said, here's my certification, please take it back. So I am not certified any longer. I've been interpreting. My first job interpreting was in February of 1996. So you can do the math on that. I am labeled a NERDA, not even related to a deaf adult, although I am married to one now, but I met her well after I was interpreting and had learned the language. My favorite preferred setting, I like change and variety. But some of my favorite jobs I've had were out in Washington, D.C., working the secret government agencies whose 3-letter names you're not allowed to know you're working for. And some of the stuff they do out there is pretty interesting. So I would say that is my preferred setting. I like the deaf spies. They're cool.
You pick, Dana. Who's next?
Let's see. Oh, now I'm going to pick on Brandy.
Brandy's decided to set this one out, so you have to pick from Kathy, Stephanie.
Oh my goodness. Well, in that case, I will pick Stephanie.
All right. I'm Stephanie Webb. Hello. I have my CICT and NIC certificates. I did the NIC when it was first under the pilot exam, so do that. I have been interpreting since 97. Dana beat me by 1 year. I started in the spring of 97. My grandmother was deaf and oral, so I grew up fingerspelling incredibly slow and was curious about sign language and took a class, met deaf people, and went boom, full into it. started to socialize 24/7. It was, for me, it was kind of a unique situation. I took my ASL class in fall of 96, and in spring of 97, they were pulling me up to start interpreting their like church gatherings and whatnot. And fall of 97, I had my little Utah provisional and started doing work that I shouldn't have been doing, and had no idea that I shouldn't have been doing it because I was enmeshed in the community and they were all saying, go do, go do. And I didn't have any education to know that, you know, you shouldn't wear a white t-shirt when you're a white person interpreting outside in the sun. So, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, I've been interpreting since fall 97. I got my RIDs a couple years later and have been doing ever since. I currently do community interpreting full time. I've kind of done it all, and I don't know that I have a favorite other than change. I love doing stuff different. I love the medical. I love higher ed. I really miss higher ed because I haven't done it in the past 5 years while I've lived here, and I'm wanting to get back into it because I appreciate, like Yesenia said, the thinking, the processing, and the language exposure. So it's a little different when you're home talking with your kids. But yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite other than I appreciate the change. I appreciate not being in the same place every day. So that's me. And I am going to pass it on to Andrea.
Hello. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm Andrea Lust. I am certified. I have a cold, so pardon me. So my brain is not working, and I just finished working, so my brain is not working. Let's see. I am certified. I'm RID certified CICT. I also have the ubiquitous EIPA 4.0 or whatever that is. I never took the NIC, but I guess I should get around to that. It's on the list of things to do. I have been interpreting professionally for, I think it's just about 20 years now here in California. And like Stephanie says, before that, there was interpreting I did that I should not have done because I wasn't ready to be doing that. So I will say professionally, I've been interpreting for about 20 years. I started out, English is not my first language. I was born in Europe, and so French is my first language. I learned English here in the United States, but I actually didn't like to speak it. But I love to watch Sesame Street and Linda Bobe all the time. So my mother convinced me that if I started speaking English, she would get someone to teach me sign language when I was about 5 years old. And so I think she took me to the basement of some church, and I started to learn C back in the day. And I do not have any relatives that are deaf. My family leans toward going blind, not necessarily deaf. And so I just really kind of stayed immersed in it year after year, just taking classes and reading books and things like that until I decided to get a professional degree about my postbac in deaf studies at CSUN. And then I hung out my shingle, and I am a diehard freelance interpreter. I do not like being staff. I like working for myself, as everybody who knows me knows that. I love freelance. I love change. I love difference. I love driving around LA. I love meeting people face to face. I love the fact that if that didn't go so well and we don't like each other, we don't have to do this again. We can go on, we can go our separate ways, and I can go focus on something else. I love platform interpreting. I love my medical interpreting a lot. I also am of the post-secondary folks. Right now, I'm getting so bougie that I'm like, graduate, PhD? Yes, that's me. I will go and do those students. I know. Challenge my mind, make me work. How do I sign that? Yes, absolutely. So I do a lot of that. You're freshman BA students, I'm sorry. You're Psych 101s. They make me a little crazy, but I will do them if I'm on campus and they need somebody to cover it. But yeah, I'm usually doing that kind of stuff. Other than that, those are my favorites. Yeah, that's me. I'm gonna throw it to Kathy.
Hi there. Thanks, Andrea. Hi, everybody. My name is Kathy. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I have RID certification. I have CICT. I got my CI in 1999. I got my CT in 2000. I want to say though, before that, I lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had my Georgia QA, my state QA from Georgia. And so when I moved to California in 95, I started interpreting at a college. So however many years that is, a lot. I'm currently working as a staff interpreter at Mount San Antonio College, but that's going to end on December 14th because like Andrea shared, I like to be in charge of my own schedule. And this has been like a fantastic opportunity for me to learn about what it means to be a staff interpreter. And I like to be able to say no. And my favorite place, where's my favorite place to work? Prior to working at Mount SAC, I had done some freelance, I had done some college, I had done some Sorensen. I think I like to be anywhere where my team thinks about interpreting as finding the meaning in a message, where the deaf individual is exactly who they are and that the hearing people are flexible. I don't really have one setting, but those are my favorite days when I have all of those things. At some point, I don't know, Bob, if you were going to ask everybody just to put in the chat where they're from. There's so many different names and I don't know who I'm talking to. And then I don't, Brandy or Bob.
Hello, everybody. Bob Laparo here. I am currently the membership committee chair for SCRID, one of my many hats that I wear. But as far as who I am and what I do, so I am a freelance interpreter mostly. I do have my RID CICT, which I got in 1999, 1 month apart from each other. I ended up having to fly to DC to take my CI because nobody else around me had it, but I did the CT, and then I flew out to DC, took it, and managed to find out I got it 3 months later, back in the day when you could actually get responses pretty quickly. So I've been interpreting officially since 98, but certified since 99. My preferred favorite setting is probably conference work and performance work, performance interpreting. So that includes speeches, it includes dignitaries, that includes big board meetings and keynotes, and also theatrical things. So that's my intro. Brandy, did you want to say anything?
Sure. I'm Brandy Davis, and I'm a member of SCRID, one of the co-chairs for the CMP or Certified Maintenance Program for RID members to get their continuing education units. And I'm a local interpreter. I work at Citrus College and I love freelancing as well. I started interpreting in 1996 and I would have taken the CICT, but I didn't feel ready. And then I was applied right before they switched it over to the NIC. So I got NIC certification. And I'm happy to be here and be amongst these amazing interpreters, of which I worked with all. Kathy and I haven't interpreted. Dana I've seen as a teacher, but Yesenia, Stephanie, and Andrew I've got to work with, and Bob too. So great interpreters.
Excellent, thank you. So as Kathy had asked, if the participants wouldn't mind, go ahead and type in the chat where you're from, if you'd like. If you want to give us any other information about your background, feel free to do it. And we'll all watch and see who's first. Type fast, type fast. Thanks,
Holding my
Christy.
breath.
Christy Whalen wins it.
Christy's a poet. She's going to give us one-line answers.
Brandy up there calling us old with our CICTs. Thank you.
I know.
She's
She
just
did
serving the
fix it.
tea. She's serving the tea. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, your hair is gray too, so be
I
careful.
know.
who
I'm
you're
like,
calling
she would
old.
not be wrong. She would not be wrong.
Oh, I'm just saying, do we have to put it out there like?
Seriously.
Some things are okay, thought, not shared.
Here we go.
Wow, Rochester, New York, Texas, DC, Maryland. Man, Y'all are from all over the country.
East Coast folks are up late.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 3 hours.
SCRID tries our best to reach beyond our borders.
Yeah, how'd you do the outreach for that group? Hi,
That's-
DC or Maryland. Any interpreting
Oh.
students want to join our group?
They do, actually. There's a few out there. Is that everybody?
Or everyone who's going to.
Nicole, you can't tell everybody the secrets. Shh.
Yay, Victoria, I'm from Covina too.
You're the neighbors.
See, Dana, if they all really put the actual truth, probably half of them are my mentees.
Margarita, CSUN. Woo!
Hey, promote them.
Brandy.
Brandy remembers. She remembers.
Yes. Hi, Victoria.
Is that a painful interview for you, Brandy? Bad experience? Is that the one you were
It was
talking about
wonderful.
before the meeting opened? Oh, it's that Victoria. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, who were you calling old earlier?
Hi, Victoria and Trish.
Payback.
Is that everybody? Looks like it.
Trish is
So-
somebody's sister-in-law? Or is that a
Everybody's.
place that I don't know about?
She's everybody's sister-in-law.
Everybody's sister-in-law.
She's my sister-in-law.
Oh, Brandy, you're famous.
For two people. Whoop, whoop.
So Brandy and I created some generic questions, which we're more than willing to ask the panelists. But if anybody out there has their own personal questions, if we haven't gotten to them, by all means, put them in the chat or click on the reactions and raise your hand and we'll call on you. We do have it set up with the panelists being spotlit right now. So you can change it to gallery view and move the tiles around if you'd like and put people where you want them. But otherwise, we have some general questions. We have some questions that are assignment related. We have some questions that are about teaming and some of those soft skill relationship type of questions, how you deal with colleagues, how you deal with consumers and agencies. And we've also got some questions about COVID and how that's affected some of us, present and future. And then finally, some agency questions specifically and some miscellaneous questions. But it seems like right now, Deirdre has a question.
What about the questions that they submitted when they signed up to get the link for this?
So thanks for asking about that, Dana.
It was Christy. I don't want to take her. I don't want to
Well,
steal her fire there.
Yeah, Christy. So about that, I set that up through Zoom for the first time and did not realize that they demanded you fill out answers for all three of those and would not let you complete registration without putting something in there. And then they never forwarded on to me your comments and questions. So they disappeared somewhere into the internet. So definitely raise your hand and ask that question again. That will help us. I'm sure it was a great question. 1, 2, or 3 of them, but
Three of them.
none of us know what it was.
I just said, will there be snacks?
Brandy was smart. She just put why, and then signed up. Some people, I'm kind of glad I didn't see those responses. But I appreciate you asking, Christy. So let's go with Deirdre, and then Christy, by all means, raise your hand.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having this. I'm an IT student, senior, and they're kind of pushing us out there, even though 2 years has been spent without immersion in the deaf community, which is another subject altogether. We'll get there. I want to focus in the sports area. And it's very hard to find interpreters who have been in the sports arena. And that could be, working with high school students who have been mainstreamed or other areas. Any tidbits on how to immerse myself in that area or get knowledge there?
I think a good question to ask would be, how many interpreters actually play sports or were in sports at any point in their life? I would say not very, although it looks like a lot of us here, but not that many are sports enthusiasts, except for Andrea and Kathy and Christy.
I guess the question is, do you just want experience in that arena? Because it's very limited. Like,
Yeah, and so, we see a lot of kids now, they're mainstreaming more. And so they're joining teams, they're football, basketball, mostly in the high school arenas, and they're needing interpreters. And so with that, it's just hard to find people with experience who have knowledge on working on that, like little things like where to stand next to the coach and on a basketball team, and where the client is. And there's all types of little tidbits that are helpful. You're not taught in school. It's just something I saw one day and I said, that's what I want to do. But having problems finding that connection.
go ahead, Andrea. I could go on for days, but
I actually have a connection, a colleague who worked with an athlete at a local university, I guess I'll say, for the time that they were on a team here. The most I could do for you in that is probably try to connect you to, and you can ask your questions of them. But that was, I believe that was a one-off for that particular colleague. They've never worked with an athlete before or after that point. And going through their entire college experience, they were the interpreter alongside them for news interviews, coaching, practices, all kinds of things. And then that summarily, when they graduate, it has an abrupt end. It doesn't go on. So even if the athlete decides to go professional, that turns that over to someone else. The interpreters provided by the university. At the high school level, I know personally I have interpreted for practices. I myself am a runner, a longtime runner, and done that type of interpreting. But again, with that, it is merely like, hey, here's what we're doing today, and then bye. For running, it's like just go and do the thing. And a lot of it is based on them taking a look at what's going on and their teammates being able to communicate with them more directly. Now for football, I got nothing. I have no idea how that works out. But I know that Marlton School here in Los Angeles, I don't know where you are, Deirdre, has a lot of students there. And I know they play basketball every day, and I know they have some organized team events and stuff like that. But if you're in the LA area, you might look into that. That's an elementary, junior high, high school kind of situation with deaf students there. And perhaps I think most of that learning would be on the ground learning, as we like to call it.
I appreciate that. Anything you have, you throw it in the chat. I'll copy it down. I appreciate that.
No, do me a favor. Just throw me your email address.
Okay.
Do you want us to put our raised hand or raise our physical hand?
If you raise your hand, it moves your tile to the front so we can see you. So if you do that, it's actually a lot easier for us to see where you're at. It's under the reactions with a little plus, probably to the far right at the bottom if you're on a PC. Deirdre, another quick response too is that right now there's not a lot of deaf people in sports at the pro levels. So we're not seeing the need for interpreters necessarily, maybe with Paralympics. But it's tough to find that as a specialty, unfortunately.
But
go ahead, Steph.
I would just add, Deirdre, as was suggested already, to find Marlton or CSDR, or just find whatever is closest to you, whatever school that is that has a good population. And you're in Texas? Okay, yeah. Find what's the closest school where you are. If you're close to the school for the deaf, if you're close to somewhere else, and just start going, see what you could do to volunteer and watch the coaches and how they position themselves. You can learn all kinds of language specialized for it there, but just watch how they all interact to do that. And then also I would say there are different Facebook groups where you could occasionally just post and say, hey, I'm a new interpreter or a soon to be interpreter. This is my interest. Anybody have anything where I could go and do some volunteer work or some intern work or anything like that? Just put it out there on occasion and see if you get any bites. Because yeah, it's rare in my experience, but put it out there and see. Every semester, every year, something, just throw it out there again.
Deidre,
Right.
it also helps if you know the sport. So if your interest is in sports interpreting, make sure you're very familiar with that particular sport. Like, like Andrea said, running's her thing, but you put her on a football field and might get a little bit lost. So, learn the games that you want to interpret for. So if you want to go for soccer, do soccer. If you want to do football, really learn about football, and you can you can watch the games professionally and see what they're doing. But there are all sorts of other things. Like you can even go out and watch a high school practice to see where the coach stands and what they're doing. But the better you know that sport, the easier it is to interpret it. So I used to get called for all sorts of sports things because everyone just assumed I played sports, which I didn't. But I learned a lot of games because I ended up having to interpret for them.
Great. Thank you. Christy.
Well, Kathy had her hand up first. I don't know if she had some input or a different question or.
I did. Thank you, Christy, for that. I just wanted to say also, Deidre, I don't know, there you are. I see you now. To also maybe check out the community colleges, because I work at a community college. There's water polo, there's volleyball, there's golf, there's football, and if there's any sport, I mean, it's required for an AA degree. So it might not be any kind of long-term thing like what some of the other people were talking about, but 16 weeks is 16 weeks. And you can reach out, to a local community college and see about observing. And I mean, you said you're almost graduated, so I don't know if that means you want to start interpreting, but that might be a place. And everybody else has said everything else.
Okay. So I some of the questions that I had that I put into the information that Bob, you didn't get. I wanted to know about interpreting in low, not high risk, so low risk things. And I'm very interested in sports. I want to teach English to deaf and hard of hearing students, but I also want to coach sports. So I'm not particularly geared for a deaf school, but possibly a mainstream school where deaf students can be in the English classroom as well as hearing students. So that's kind of what I'd like to go for and be able to communicate. So I was hoping to find out some information to where if low risk, and yes, maybe nobody's deaf or hard of hearing, but to practice, like at youth sports, can we do that on a football sideline or a soccer sideline, or just cheer practice or something to that effect? Because a lot of that's repetition, and a lot of that are words that I would be needing, even if I'm going to like a cross country meet and like cheering on kids. They won't know what I'm saying, but I will be using words that as a coach I would be utilizing and saying. And the kids, as if they like run faster or whatever, they'll get to knowing what that means, even if they don't know sign language. Just by seeing those terms visually, they'll know what I will be saying to them visually rather than hearing it. Or kind of like there's different terminology and stuff in different sports, and so they'll actually start learning that. So that was one of the things, that low risk thing. And I have to think of the other question. So while you guys are thinking about that, I wanted to let you guys know that there have been quite a few of professional deaf athletes. And the reason that we don't have a lot of them is because they don't have the same opportunities as hearing athletes do. And there is Deaf Olympics that's been going on since the early 1900s. And those athletes are can compete in the regular Olympics, the Paralympics, or the Deaf Olympics. And the Deaf Olympics will be coming up in Brazil, May 1st through the 15th in 2022. So just wanted to share all that. So, so sorry, I took a lot of time, but does anybody are the things that I suggested, are those okay for low key interpreting for practice? You know, at a soccer practice or a game or cheerleading practice or any of those things, or do I need to have a specific person in need to be able to do those things to interpret for? Yes, Dana.
I would say like low risk. It's more like zero risk if you don't really have any deaf people there. So
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with going out and practicing as long as the wherever you're going is okay with you being there and doing it. But when you're talking about sports, you talked about picking up on some of the language or the jargon. But there's jargon in English, and then there's jargon in ASL too. And so you might want to look for some resources online. I'm sure you can find a bunch of deaf guys. In fact, I just spent a weekend with this old deaf dude, and all he did was talk sports for hours and hours and hours. I think I mentioned I'm not really into sports, but man, this guy would not shut up about it. He was super cool, nice guy, but he loved his sports. And so learning the jargon of what you're doing so that you're not maybe practicing the wrong signs for something. Like I remember at Gallaudet when I had a friend of mine teach me what the sign for tackle was, and I had no idea what he was saying. And he showed it to me like 5 times. I'm like, I don't get it. Then he stood up off the couch and tackled me. And I was like, oh, that's what that means. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So I never forgot that sign after that. And I think I got a head injury too, but making sure you're learning the jargon for those specific sports too. So like if you're going out for cheerleading, there is definitely jargon for deaf people cheerleading, because I was a professional cheerleader for years. And I know that there are signs that they will use that you will probably never see anywhere other than with a deaf cheerleader.
Yeah, cheerleading is fascinating to me in the deaf community. I just think it's
yeah, there's a whole subculture on how you cheer with a deaf person or with a deaf partner on the cheer team. And it's most of the hearing people never realize what it is that you're doing, but when they're doing it, it's like, oh, it looks just like what the hearing people are doing, but the way that you get there, the methodology and the way that you would interpret that is very different. So I would reach out to people who are doing it. I mean, Gallaudet's a great resource because they have all of those things are happening there all at the same time. And you can even reach out to the coaches and say, hey, do you have any just videos that I could watch or something they posted online? And a lot of times you can get access to that, but that'll help you with the jargon. But as for the practice, I think it's cool to just show up at a random team's game and start interpreting what everyone's saying. A little bit weird, but cool.
Could go to a deaf school and watch the games and watch their signing and how they huddle, or I don't know, depending on what games you go to.
Yes, I want to do that as well.
The cheerleaders are there. I mean, you could catch it all.
Yes, definitely.
So that's always a resource.
Thank you. I think the second question had to do with upping the stakes and doing it for like high school or even college, because not all colleges, sorry, I moved my square. Not all colleges have that access, but like if a coach would let you do their practice or something, like if a softball coach would let you do their practice and sign, if you could do that or something, or just anything, even a high school team. So it was just a thought, because that jargon's a little bit different, or the discussion's a little different. So same question, just different groups. So thank you.
Christopher.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for putting on this event. I have 3 questions. I'm going to actually put them in the chat box as well, so that way you guys can see them in case you wanted a visual reference. What was your experience like taking interpreting exams? What did you do to prepare? And what advice do you have for trying to pass them?
Are they signed ones? Are they written? Are they conceptual? I mean, they're signed ones, right?
Yeah, I think Andrea had the best advice there.
Yeah, I was watching it.
Saw what she was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so for interpreting, let's say like, for example, EIPA, NIC, any type of ASL to English based interpreting. The written one we'll kind of leave off to the side, but if you have anything for the written exams as well, feel free to throw it in there.
One thing I recommend in preparing for your performance exams is, first off, the psychological aspect of reminding yourself that it's something you do every day. If you're ready to go in and take the RID exam, that means you've done some interpreting before, wherever that is. So remember that when it's an exam situation, yeah, it's an exam situation, it's pressure, it's stakes, it's all of that stuff, and it's what you do every day. And thankfully, now that we're in COVID, we're even more used to working off of screens. So we don't even have that difference anymore of, oh, now I have to read off of 2D, because you do it every day. So let yourself remember that it's okay to breathe, and this is just what you do every day. So approach it with that mindset. I have found very, very helpful. As far as practicing, finding things that, there's stuff out there all over online that are test prep materials, test prep sample work. Find yourself a good interview to be able to watch and practice. Find yourself a good clip, whatever it is. Find your clips to practice, and actually record yourself. And after you record yourself, I'm a huge fan of doing diagnostics on yourself. So go back, watch it. Where were your omissions? Where were your additions? What did you do? What are your patterns? And then start consciously working on those patterns. For transliteration, well, for AS, it's going to be different. For the interpretation, it's going to be all about, how do I detach from form? How can I see it visually here before I put it out here? And with transliteration, how much can I sign every word that I'm saying right now without doing all of the endings and everything like that? And just practice with that. Every single word, go extra hard on your transliteration. And then it won't be as difficult when you get into the test. So, couple quick tips.
I remember when I still remember when I took the test, and I was paranoid going into it. Like, I was so nervous, and Stephanie's right. Like, after I walked out, I was like, oh my God, I do this every day. Like, I wish I hadn't been that nervous, but there are things like general, nothing to do with interpreting, but there are just general test prep books and things that you can read that give you nice advice. Things like get a good night's sleep. If you have to take the test far away, drive there the day before, relax, get used to the environment, drive to the test place the day before so you know where it's at, and then go and stay in a hotel and relax. But there's lots of advice out there on just general, like, taking tests, and those really do help, because when you're going into it, and my hands were shaking. I remember the first time I took the test, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is my life. And then, I realized it really wasn't. It was not as nerve-wracking as I made it out to be after taking the test. But do those things, because those things really help to walk you through and to relax you and get you in a place where you're just being you and you're not worried about being tested.
It's going to sound like more of the same. But like Dana just reminded, of course, we took our tests eons ago, according to Brandy. So long ago, it was on a tablet. It was terrible, but it was terrifying. It really was. And
I mean, not the electronic tablet kind, right?
No,
not the tablet.
No, I still remember the stone chisel. Yeah, that was hard work.
He mentioned the written exam, and I was like, ooh, goodness, we took that, didn't we? But honestly, the skills that you've obtained until this point where you say to yourself, I'm ready to go in and take this exam, you already have. And it's very important to remind yourself that those skills are in you, and you've already proven to yourself over and over again, you can do this job. And that's what you can't forget when you go in there, so you can relax and release your mind in order to allow you to do the thing that you came there to do. I think that's most important in the prep portion of it. The blood, sweat, and tears that you survived before that is really the test. That's really the test. All that, okay, I see where I screwed up here and all of that. You guys have it great. I'm not even going to lie. We did not have this proponent of research and easy access to videos and all of this stuff that you guys have now that you can get with a click of a button. I was mentoring someone and I found out they were struggling with their ASL to English. And we just started pulling up different YouTube videos on different topics. And I, in sign and said, okay, go for it. What are they talking about? And it's just this opportunity that you have to practice that is just pervasively there for you if you have a struggle area. So if you have a struggle area, I'd say, well, the same thing I told my kids when they were working on like AP exams and stuff, or the ACT or SAT. If you're not struggling with English, don't study English. You're fine. Move on to the part that you're struggling with and focus there first, and then get that to a place where you feel more comfortable, and then give a more comprehensive look at everything that has to be done. The other stuff, show up on time. I'm a big proponent of dressing nice. I don't know. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel confident. Wear your favorite perfume, get your hair done, whatever it needs you need to do, to make that, to alleviate the stress in whatever way you do. And then drink heavily until the results come back.
Can I just add something to, everything is great. I tend to have like a ritual in the morning just to prep myself. And I think if you do that on the everyday, you start off in a good place, And I too was like, hell, I've never taken this test. And oh my God, I got there, like Dana said, like stay over. I didn't do that. I drove all the way to San Diego and I was the first person they were, interviewing and testing. I didn't know what I was doing. I just showed up. Dead tired, traffic, raining, all the way over there. So definitely do take all these things into consideration. I don't need coffee. I'm amped out half the time anyway, but do eat something healthy, not heavy. Maybe have some affirmations prior, like have some kind of Zen time, phone off, maybe even an hour before. You can check it or whatever, but like just kind of be settled into yourself before you take an exam or this test, and just know that you got it. This whole time you've been working on it, like you just got to show up, you know what I mean? And I think, they'll talk to you, they'll tell you like, don't worry about it. But I think now it's just a video, like, okay, interpret this. And you're just like signing to the screen. You don't have a panel of people staring at you and going, who are you? What are you wearing? You're like, do I have something in my face? Or, it's not this awkward thing before. People are getting used to this whole video stuff. So it's second nature. It's a mental game. So if you're ready, you're ready. You just have to, right before it, have some kind of setup, like ritual that will keep you down. Keep your emotions down and just be ready to roll. I know tidbit.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next, Nicole. Struck.
I think she
Nicole has left the building.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if she comes back, we will hold her spot, I guess.
Was your hand up with a question? Seeing your hand has been raised for a bit, Brandy.
Yeah,
Yes.
Brandy's gonna do some anonymous questions. Go,
Yeah.
Brandy.
So I have an anonymous question. For a person who's graduating soon and feeling like taking off the training wheels, 2 or 3 questions. One, the person says, I hear conflicting answers about going into VRS. I would like to hear opinions from the panel. I like the idea of having support around me, although I'm not crazy about VRS. What kind of support can I expect from teammates or an agency if I go into community interpreting through an agency like Purple or Sorensen?
Let's do that first question first.
Is VRS a good place for a new interpreter? And is there support?
Oh, I think it depends. I remember, because I worked for Sorensen for a long time, and I remember the director's like, hey, let's want to let our newbie, we're training them, now on the equipment, everything in life. Do you want to give them any advice? My advice to them was make sure you find a therapist, because if you're not ready for these calls are random. I'm talking about somebody died, somebody got beat up, somebody, I mean, they'll hit you on a random time, random day. You might not be physically, emotionally ready for these things. And eventually, years or months, or it could be one time. It just depends on your emotional strength. I feel like emotional intelligence on that particular day, what's happening. Like I had a lot of stuff going on in my family for a couple of years, people dying, people being sick, people in the hospital, all kinds of stuff. And so when any of those calls came, I was like, I just like flared up in there, and I was like, okay, I need to call a team, or I need to transfer. I need to transfer this out. And for like the first 2 years, I did graveyard, and graveyard is, sex calls and some dirty, some gross, some, just, and it wasn't just that, it was like random stuff too. And weird stuff. You're just going to be like, God, like, is this what the world's about? And so just to get to the point is, if you really do want to do VRS, I feel like you need to be emotionally stable. If you don't, you're going to have a really bad experience, and you're going to go, I never want to do that again. And, just get scarred from it. So that was my own little PSA on that.
Kathy, why don't you go first? Mine's usually an unpopular view of VRS.
I'll just quickly say, thank you, Dana, that I would suggest, oh, hi, Kitty. I would suggest, if, like, Yesenia is absolutely right. There is a certain amount of therapy that is going to be good advice for any interpreting situation, and especially VRS, depending on what shift you work. So for me, I did some Sorensen work for a while. I made sure that I did business calls. I started at a time where it was like business hours. I also had the privilege of it wasn't my full-time gig. So I also wasn't there for more than 4 hours. Like that would be my longest shift in VRS, because that made it still fresh, like I got there, got warmed up, and then it was time to leave. Also, I would suggest, there's like this whole other layer of demand. I found, so I had been interpreting for years before I went to VRS work. I struggled with that stupid computer more than any of the interpreting, I think, in my whole time there. So if you're trying to find a sign for what something means, and you're trying to deal with the computer, and you're trying to hold the floor, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah. Very much.
So I started doing VRS, I think, in 2002. And I've worked for every VRS company that exists, except I think ZVRS didn't exist when I finally left doing VRS stuff. And I've worked everywhere from like the federal VRS, where you have to be a federal employee to use it, to graveyard shifts with Sorensen, which were fun and interesting. So I sort of separate VRS in my head into two different categories. One is the ethical good interpreter, and what should you do? What should you learn in your ITP? And the other is the reality of the situations that you're placed in. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the realities. The realities are, you're sitting in a booth, you're surrounded by interpreters, but they're sitting in their booths too. And they can't see you, and you can't see them. They can't see the deaf person on your screen. You have no idea what's going on. They may sound amazing. You may have Joe Smith next to you that you're like, oh my God, he's an incredible voicer, and the way he talked about that soccer match was fantastic. And then you get a peek at the screen, you're like, it's too bad the deaf person's talking about woodworking. but wow, he sounds amazing the way he talked about soccer. So the reality is it's kind of hit and miss when you're calling into VRS on whether or not the interpreter is going to be able to understand the deaf person or the hearing person. So is it a good place for a new interpreter to start? It's really high risk and it's really low risk at the same time. It's high risk because sometimes you're dealing with life and death situations, or talking to a family member about somebody who died, but it's low risk in that nobody's watching you, nobody's checking in on you, nobody's making sure you're getting it right or wrong, and the deaf person has the right to just hang up at any time and call back and get another interpreter. So like I said, mine isn't necessarily a popular view on VRS interpreting, but the reality is you're the only person who is going to police the work that you're doing. And if you're miserable and terrible at it and you try your best, you're probably going to get better, and it's a good place to practice, but you're really practicing at the expense of the deaf community too, because you're going to end up, and I can't tell you how many calls I've watched the interpreter interpret for my wife or my friends where I'm like, oh my God, that's not what they said at all. But good for the interpreter for sticking it out and trying to get better at it. And hopefully that's the goal, is that you're there trying to improve your skills. One of the downsides is that VRS is like a drug because it pays regularly. You can schedule it at any time.
Yeah.
I've worked 18-hour shifts doing VRS. This is back when you didn't have a lot of people calling in all the time. So everyone in the call center was excited when a single call would come in and we'd all watch each other do the job. And as short as a 30-minute shift, and there's lots of vicarious trauma involved, but it's like a drug because when you can get paid, you can schedule it for as many hours as they'll let you schedule it, and it's regular income, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're working on the skills and developing it. So I like to see VRS as a great place to go in and say, I want to focus on using pronouns appropriately while I'm interpreting. And that's all you focus on for the day. And you may hit or miss on the calls that you get, and you may do a fantastic job. You may do a terrible job. And it kind of doesn't matter at the end of the day. The goal is to get your skills up and to be able to do it. And at some point, you might be really good at it. You might find out that you love VRS. So it's a good place to practice, but ethically, it's not necessarily a good place to practice because you're thrown into any situation at any time. So you have to make that decision of, do I want to be moral and ethical, or do I want to realize that maybe this isn't the place where moral and ethics play a big role? So that's sort of my view on VRS. It was a little bit filtered, so I didn't give you guys the full Monty, but at least you got part of it.
Yeah, I don't think it should be the first place, definitely. And somebody should vouch for you and be like, I think you're ready for VRS. And ask the questions, ask the hard questions. Do you think I'm ready for that? Like, do you think I can emotionally stable for this, emotionally stable for that? And plus, you do learn a lot with VRS. You should still do VRS. I learned a lot, and I had years of experience already. But your voicing skills, your quick new color, new this, new that, and then East Coast to West Coast signs, I learned a lot. Yeah.
I just want to second all of that. Ksenia, I really appreciate that. I agree. It was fascinating learning the regional signs. Oh my God, that was one of the best things about it. And yeah, I agree. It should not be a first stop because you have no idea what's going to come. And you got to have well-rounded vocabulary. You've got to have all of the soft skills to be able to deal with all the different personalities. There's a lot. So it's good for new interpreters. And I agree with what Dana was saying about, it could be, it's a lot of exposure. And if the deaf person really needs to, they can hang up, which really, really sucks. Like he said, if you're going to be ethical, because yeah, you get voicemails left from interpreters on VRS and you can't even understand who to call back or what they were trying to get to tell you. So yeah, I agree. Thank you, Yesenia.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry, because this is just my pet peeve. In regards to like interpreting programs, all the ITPs, I have suggested this a long time ago, And me and another interpreter who was a teacher in Bakersfield, we're talking about curriculum and what should be included in an interpreter training program. And I always, because my background's in counseling too, my master's is in counseling. And I said, there should be a counseling class there just to kind of do this and kind of be able to like, okay, I'll be able to manage wherever I go, not just VRS. VRS is very heavy, emotional heavy, but no matter where you go, you're going to be confronted with these things. So you better have some kind of foundational tools that you've took in a class. So my suggestion was always to change the program and add a counseling class just so you can have that little thing in your bag that you're going to use pretty often. Anyway.
Thank you so much for those answers. My next question is, as a new interpreter, should I tell my teammate that I'm new, or will that make them run away from me?
They'll know.
They're gonna know.
New interpreters walk like, yeah, they have this look. Trust me, I had that look for a long time.
I think it's pretty obvious, but I think that's good advice for life. If you're walking into a situation that you're new at and there are people there that are experienced, tell them. Like, I just recently started refereeing soccer, and the first thing I do when I go on the field and I'm working with a referee, I go, hey, this is my first season and my 6th game ever. I am brand new and I'm going to be making mistakes. Please help me to not make those mistakes again, or to at least recognize the mistakes that I'm making. So I think it's helpful. And sometimes you'll get interpreters that will just say, okay, fine, I'll make sure the message is clear. And other times you'll have people be like, where's my pad of paper, my pencil? Like, I'm ready to give you advice. This is going to be fun. And, and it just depends on who you're teaming with. But I think it's always helpful to give them a little heads up to say, hey, by the way, I'm new and I want to be not new. I want to be experienced. And if you could help me get from where I'm at to where I want to be, that would be great. And you'll find a lot of people out there are more than willing to help you along the way in a nice way.
That's an awesome approach.
Yeah, I saw Stephanie, then Andrea, then Kathy.
Thank you, Brandy. I would say that transparency is a key thing while interpreting. Always transparency. We, as interpreters, it's so critical that we are able to do, like Yesenia was saying, and watch where we are coming into the situation and how we're involved in that and how our own internal stuff is impacting it. And part of that is being new. And it's important to always make sure that not only we're transparent with our team, but we're transparent with our consumers as well. So the deaf person, it's very appropriate to let them know, hey, I'm here, I'm new, I'm open, I'm excited. Don't sell yourself short. Humility.
Do you have any signs
and confidence. Yeah, please. I'm excited to work together as a team, because we're not just teaming with the other interpreter, we're teaming with the deaf person. We're teaming with the hearing person. Everybody is here together as a team. So as transparent as you can be about where you're at, and remember to mix that humility and confidence, because interpreters easily get pricked up in egos, just like other humans. And we have to remember it's not about us. We're here because there is a need for space to communicate, and we have to be there to create the best, most open, most equitable space possible. And if we're trying to front like we're something we're not, or if we're even just going in and not saying anything because I don't want anyone to worry, well, like was said, they're gonna know you're new. So be transparent, be forthright about it, and be confident in who you are and what you bring, while also remaining humble about the fact that none of us bring everything and every one of us has a lot to learn. I think Andrea and Kathy were.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that while you might be presenting yourself as I'm a new interpreter, that is not something that you'll stop doing. That as teaming that Stephanie is talking about is that we're going to be new in situations. We talk to each other about, hey, have you done this before? Do you know the client? Do we know what you're doing? We're presenting ourselves as new often in a situation, may not be as far as an experiential frame, but experience in that particular venue is what we're talking about. So we're talking about Stephanie again, talking about saying, be upward, confront, hey, here's where my weaknesses are today. Hey, I woke up with a migraine. I'm here. I'm weak, but I'm here. Like whatever it is, come to the table with everything that you've got so that you can be a full team to your deaf consumer, your hearing consumer, and your interpreting partner that's there. And that's all we want. We want you to, my things are show up on time, please. Show up on time, show up ready to work, show up dressed, ready to work, and show up, if we've had some prep to do, make sure you've got it done so that we can all work on this together. We can make this whole thing go, we could all leave here as shining stars and thinking that our day was blossomed beautifully, and that if there's a deficit area, we can figure it out. We can figure out how to work through this. If you have no idea what's going on here, let me go first. Let me show you what some of these signs are. Let me show you how we're going to work with this client today. And then when you take over, I'm here to support you. I'm not going to the bathroom, I'm not getting coffee, I'm not doing a whole bunch of other things. I'm focused on what's happening to you while you're in the chair. And so that idea of revealing yourself doesn't only stop when you feel like you've become this really experienced interpreter, that it's something that we do every time you're working with a team or every time you're coming up into a job.
Okay, everything that everybody has said, all of those things. And it's going to sound super kitsch for me to say this, but there is no I in team. This is my biggest pet peeve about our field. Andrea was speaking truth to power when she was saying that none of us know everything. And I want to challenge newer interpreters to realize that there's a whole bunch of stuff that you bring to the task that I don't have. If we show up on a community college campus and the student is younger than I am, I might not have all the TikToks memorized. So it's not about, oh, this person has more experience. It's just, what do we bring to the task? And the transparency that Stephanie was just talking about is so key. And I am a firm believer in transparent teaming, where there is no off interpreter, where interpreters are just right next to each other and support each other in that way. Because like you've heard from everybody else, the team is all of the members of the interaction. And I think the biggest detriment we can do to newer interpreters is have them feel like, oh, well, you didn't carry your part of the load. That's not the way to come into this. It's that you have stuff that I don't have. I have stuff that you don't have. And we are all collectively going to work this out together. Go team.
Awesome. Thank you. So
Next, Cassandra.
Hello. So my question is, so like being like an experienced interpreter, do you still like have mentors? Do you like change mentors? Like, do you like still have the same mentor that you've had since you graduated, or like how do you progress, and like do you get new ones over time, or and also like have like what is your experience with working with the CDI also?
Let's see if we can get one or two answers. We're kind of running out of time, and we want to get to some other questions too.
I can jump in on that, on having mentors. I have had mentors for my entire career, and I still have mentors. I still have people. I would say in some of the areas where I feel like I've mastered it, I have more of peers that I can discuss things with. But there are always areas in our life where we can find room for improvement, and we can find somebody who's already doing it and ask them how to do it. So I think mentors are incredibly important. And just asking someone, hey, I really like the work you do. Would you mind helping me out or mentoring me in this? Or sometimes you can be very specific. Hey, I really like the way you voiced that conference. Would you mind talking to me a little bit about how you did that? And that's one way that you can find or build mentors.
Can I pop in here? Great. Yes, absolutely. I've had mentors my entire career. I still mentor with some of the people that I mentored with early on my career. The screen just moved and I don't see your face now. Oh, there you are. Okay. So my thing, this is another one of my things, is that I think it's important that whoever you talk to, you ask them what their definition of mentoring is. Because I think in the field, we use that word like we use the word interpreting, and we all think we know what we mean when we say that, but we don't. And so I think making sure that you understand what it is that you're asking for is something that this person can provide for you. Because mentoring can be like something Stephanie talked about earlier, is getting a diagnostic of your work prior to taking a test. But some of us are not diagnosticians. That's not the thing I enjoy doing with an interpreter. So I think defining the task is step number one. And quickly, CDIs, we don't use them enough. We really need to get our egos out of the game as a profession and realize that it's not about us, it's about deaf people, and how deaf people have such an easier time reading a CDI than they do a second language learner like myself.
Can I add to that? Yes. Okay. I always wanted a mentor. I didn't, you know how everyone says, I'm going to get a mentor. I never had an official mentor. I went through life saying yes to all the assignments, some good, some bad. Some for good reasons and still bad experiences, some for bad reasons and good experiences. Like, it's just the nature of the work. And I think as we move on, things get adjusted and we learn from these things, not just on a personal note, but even in our profession. Our profession has really become a profession. ASL became a recognized language during this last 20 years, you know what I'm saying? So we're kind of in that cusp, like we're seasoned interpreters, but we paved this pavement to make it easier for our newbies, and I love it. I hope you find a mentor. Sometimes a mentor is just someone that you can trust, who can give you like a sounding board. Hey, what sign do you use for this? Oh, I use this. And then you build this group of people that you have this trust that they're not going to judge you like, oh my gosh, you didn't know the sign. Because people do get petty like that in whatever field you're in. And our field was very much like that before. It was very competitive, even with each other. And now it's grown. I hope people are feeling this way. I hope it's grown where we really want to connect. And this is how I feel, I guess. I want my team to be representing my ideas too. You know what I mean? They represent me. I'm a coordinator at a college and I'm their lead. And I feel like this responsibility to make sure that they're doing well emotionally, but that they have this healthy way of helping each other grow as professionals. So as we're doing this, we're giving back to our students, or not students, but to our profession. But we want you guys to come up healthy and to be able to do this long term. And I'm sure many of us, I've had plenty of experiences where I'm like, I never want to interpret again. I want to leave this field with this one ugly experience that I had, where I just got fed up that nobody wanted to help and everyone's just, me, and not sharing information. And it gets very lonely. And I think too, because I am a person of color, and there wasn't many people, while I was coming up who was like me. It was hard. And I constantly had to prove myself 100 times more than the average person, that I was okay and that I was good enough. So whenever you're feeling like that, make sure you go back to your core peeps, even if they're not interpreters, that they're going to do this for you and that you're not going to give up. And because you're all needed and we need you healthy too. So it's important. So although we say, well, I'm looking for a mentor, a mentor is someone who you perceive that you can trust. And then if you don't find it in the interpreting world, that you have it somewhere else where they're going to give you that, and you'll have your group of people who you came up with in ITP or in different jobs that you do, that you connect with someone, you're like, hey, I really like that connection. Continue connecting with them. That's going to be your growing point right there. I mean, it was for me.
Great, thanks.
Okay, we're supposed to end at 7:30, 7:21. I know we had so many questions, but let me ask like a lightning round, maybe if you can keep your answers to like 20, 30 seconds. I like the question, how do you show, let me see, how is it written? How do you show genuine respect for your interpreter colleagues?
Oh, I can go first.
Okay.
I don't. Respect is earned. If you don't have to be great, you don't have to be skilled, but you have to have something. Either you come in, you're dressed professional, you've done your prep work, you've come in and you said, hey, I'm new, I need help with that. Those are ways that you earn respect, but I don't give somebody respect just because they say, well, I'm an interpreter, therefore you must respect me. That's one of the reasons why I returned my certification, is because of that tenet. I don't think somebody earns respect just because they call themselves an interpreter. They earn respect because they do things that earn them respect in the field. That's all I had to say on that.
Thanks. Yesenia?
I appreciate your viewpoint, Dana, and it's very clear and very honest. And I get that. I get why, because they represent our profession. But I also believe that it's such a great question. Like, on the other hand, I try to show kindness and patience. It's so underrated. Put a smile on your face when you meet them. So, where you're just feeling awkward, it kind of settles them a little bit. I think also sharing information, building those relationships that sometimes we only have 5 minutes before an assignment, and because everyone's running later for whatever reason. I don't like to be late either, by the way. Just being transparent and honest with each other and working as a team, not as a silo. I wrote all this stuff, by the way. And I think in regards to that, it's about like building community, not only in your interpreting field, but if we don't know each other, like if it's the first time you're teaming, you have to try and build something, some kind of connection before you even start. And then to trust that we have each other's back. So when we are giving each other feeding or feedback, even afterwards, after maybe you want to debrief, that it's not going to be like this, I don't even know them, you know what I mean? That you're going to take it and you're going to be like, thank you, I appreciate it. But I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, everything everybody has said already. And I appreciate Dana's point of view. That's the first time I've heard his point of view. So I appreciate what he has to say. What I want to say is, as a white interpreter, this might take us down a rabbit hole, but I just want to say, as a white interpreter, I've had to do a lot of growth and learning. And I think that lately, in the last couple of years, what I've done to honor my teams are to make sure that interpreters of color are being used in situations where they've been asked to be used at or should be used at, in my view, and to center them as my team, to really center interpreters of color. I want to echo what Yesenia said. She said she grew up in this field and there weren't that many that interpreters of color have to prove themselves. That is still true today. And so for my white colleagues, I would like to challenge you too, to kind of center and learn more about interpreters of color and how to be supportive, because because we need to.
I'm going to jump on Kathy's end because I was going to talk about what as a POC, as a Black female interpreter, what the difference is when I show up for a job sometimes when I have a white team or a white client, that the struggle bus is real, from getting to my car to getting to that chair and being able to interpret clearly, cleanly, and focus on my job, because I've got to go through a whole bunch of, depending on the situation, different roadblocks I have to overcome before I can even get there. So I understand Dana's perspective. I love that about respect being earned, absolutely. But I think Yesenia's perspective on kindness being something that should be at the forefront of what we do, what anybody does really, is something that we can all put forward. If I put out kindness and you give me smack, well, that's a different story, and we can talk about it after the event. But I have certainly put out kindness and received nothing but hardtack after that. So I know what that looks like. I come from a place of kindness and a place of wanting to do a great job and a place of professionalism whenever I show up for a job. And I think that is the best I can do. I understand your use of the word respect, but I think that you're looking for that that friendliness, that kindness that people can afford you when you appear or you show up on the job. Because I'm not trying to give you stress when you get there. This job is going to create enough for the day. And I'm not one of those things. I have, my grandfather's always like, don't leave people worse for having met you. So I kind of live with that mantra that I feel like you should be at least smiling because you met me, not because of something that I did. But again, to that POC compared to white interpreters thing, I live here in Southern California. It's democratic, it's flex, it should be like it happens. It happens where I have to like massage feelings and make people feel okay and let them know that I'm a skilled interpreter. Oh, I didn't realize you know how to interpret. And I don't know why it just comes to the front that because my skin is brown, I may not know what I'm doing. Oh, you're certified. Oh, wow, I didn't realize that. All these things are things that happen that I have to confront sometimes before I get into the chair and do my job. And so if you can come with a sense of kindness and ready to work, and like Dana said, the things that earn the respect are showing up. Are you ready? Are you dressed? Are you prepared for what we have to do today? Are you ready to do this together? Are you ready to work together to get this job done? Those are all things that earn your respect. The kindness is what I expect from you when we meet in the parking lot beforehand, drinking our coffee so we can talk about what we're going to do next.
I want one thing out of this workshop I really wanted to just put out there, because I never get this platform, not all the time. It's probably my second time, is that this thing called cultural capital. So I seen you, Kathy, you're really working on this, and I appreciate you for even bringing that up. And I just wanted to leave everyone with that, because although I am a person of color, I don't know the Black experience. I don't know the Asian experience. And I'm constantly working with all kinds of different POCs. And I'm constantly building this cultural capital, and that you get to know each other and understand each other. And I think it's so important that I leave you guys with that. Thank you.
So now we have about a minute left. Thank you very much, panelists, for all your wonderful comments. We got some great stuff from the students and the graduate ITP students, or whoever happens to be out there, participants. A lot of questions not yet answered, and that's okay. You will continue to unfold and understand and learn from them. I just put in the chat box, SCRID is of, by, and for all of us. We all volunteer to make this happen for you. If you would love to join us and be part of it, become a member. If you want to join up one of our committees or be part of the board, even better, you are always welcome. So I just included the link for you to join SCRID. We do need people, and we want diverse perspectives, even your prospective participants. You, as new people coming into the field, sometimes those of us who've been in it for a long time forget the basic stuff, and we just say, we've done it. No, we know it's scary. It's new. There's a lot of questions. We're here for you. we've been here for each other. We're here for you. So thank you very much, Brandy, for helping and inviting people. Thanks to all the panelists who've been here. We really appreciate it. This will be put up on the website, on the SCRID website soon.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Brandy. This was great.
Thank you.
A lot of fun.
Too
Join
bad. It
Scrid.
should have been 3 to 4 hours. You guys have so
Thank
much
you.
information to share.